Join us on the Path Radio Mix online. And to get there, type in thepathradio.com. That's thepathradio.com. And enjoy free streaming music all day long. That's it. thepathradio.com. All right, now let's get to the main show, the Monthly Social Podcast, with me, your host, Guido Perino, as you go on with Guido. Hello and welcome to the July Go On with Guido podcast. Lots going on this month. We've got special guest Linda Peacock, who's going to talk to us about autism. We've got special musical guest Holdsy with a song for you. We've also got a brand new segment, For Fan Sports Talk, where folks just like you, fans, are going to talk about a bunch of different things like the NHL, suspensions, Euro Cup, and a whole lot more. I've also got my story/essay for you, which you don't want to miss because it's called I Think You Missed My Point. And then, of course, at the end, a special little bonus. Hope you enjoy the podcast, folks. Let's go. All right, before we get started today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about one of our Promote Ontario/Canada small businesses. Johnny Prosciutto, artisanal Italian homemade products. We make it like our grandfather, or as we say, nonno. Naturally cured, old-fashioned, and delicious. The best part? We deliver straight to your front door. We offer free shipping when spending over $99. Order online at johnnyprosciutto.com and stay safe. And when you use the code GOGUIDO, you're going to save $25 off your entire order. That's the code GOGUIDO on johnnyprosciutto.com. Listen, we've been enjoying Johnny Prosciutto products now for the last couple of months, and we've been enjoying it with a discount code that Anthony over at johnnyprosciutto.com has given us. He gave us a new one. It's Go Guido. So use the code, get $25 off your next order, and enjoy some really authentic Italian artisanal products. Everyone who's ordered so far has gotten back to me and said, hey, Guido, this really is authentic. You were right. It tastes delicious. It tastes good. They're telling me that they're eating it. They're telling me that they're serving it to their guests, and the guests are loving it. My parents who've made this stuff have said, Guido, this is really good. This is really authentic stuff. It's the real deal. Check it out, johnnyprosciutto.com. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Linda Peacock. Linda is an advocate for autism spectrum disorder, taking a personal interest on families, access to service, and more. She's here today to share her experience and knowledge with us. Welcome to this special Inside OPS edition of the Go On with Guido podcast, Linda. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks so much, Guido, for having me here.
That's good to hear, Linda, and thanks for joining us. We record this thing late in the evening, but our schedules were a little busy this week, so we're doing it early in the morning. That's okay, right?
Yeah, I'm great with that. Thanks.
So, Linda, you and I have had several chats about ASD, autism spectrum disorder, over the last few years, because it's something very personal to you. Before we get going, let's set some context for folks that are listening. Couple of things. Maybe you could work these out for us. What is autism spectrum disorder, or as I said, ASD? And then what events at home led you to become so involved with ASD?
That's a really good question, Guido, because when it comes down to autism spectrum disorder, typically the ASD diagnosis and the model itself defines autism as a lifelong neurodevelopmental disorder itself that affects the way a person communicates and how that individual lives in terms of their relation to other individuals in the world around them, and really how they communicate with the world around them. So it can affect how the individual expresses themselves through body language, posture, social interactions, and also the relationships that they have with others, being obviously like their family and with other social interactions. So some of those things too can also exist in terms of sensory processing capacities, but it also exists really across the world. It's not just about, one region or one area. It really does exist across all cultures, ethnicities, races, and gender identities. Some of the events that kind of led at home to become more involved with autism spectrum disorder was really due to the fact that I had an early introduction to it with, I have 3 children. My children are all girls. They're ages 14, 12, and 10 right now. So a lot of that really came down to, at an early age, typically with most children, as you're raising them, you'll see a lot of cue markers. And most of the time you'll get like a pamphlet from your family pediatrician or from your doctor that typically says, oh, you're supposed to meet these types of milestones, or your child's supposed to walk by this age, they're supposed to talk by this age, they're supposed to babble, or they're supposed to bring their hands to their mouth in order to bring food to their mouth, certain things like that, like any little type of milestone in terms of development supposed to be hit, especially at certain months and accruity of age. My daughters themselves really, there were some genetic things that we'll talk about a little bit more that got me involved in it, just because of what was going on initially, and some things that kind of make you kind of go, aha, so to speak.
Right. So really it's, you're looking at things at home and you're thinking, hey, my child should be doing A, B, or C by this age, or something, right? There's some sort of developmental question that maybe you had at home for your personal situation. Now, you said it's global. Would it apply to everybody? Like, is it, would everybody say, oh yeah, that's, it's because this developmental thing hasn't happened that maybe it's this. Is that global too?
Yeah, and most of it, so to speak, in most terms for pediatric medicine, it is pretty global, especially when you're, if you are in a country that may have a developed medical system. So, for example, in England, so in the UK, in Finland, Sweden, and some of those other countries that may have some further development, medically speaking. Right. They typically do have a standard approach to those milestones, but in some variables, when you look at culture upbringing too, there are some studies that typically show, even with children that are on the autism spectrum, culturally speaking, sometimes those children may fare a little bit better, especially when you look at depending upon if you go to other countries that may have indigenous cultures, where it literally, that whole statement of it takes a tribe to raise a child or to raise a family, yes. Literally they are doing that. So there are some kind of variables that you'll see when you see indigenous individuals or even people of color, where the family structure may be even stronger. It's not to say that they don't require the supports, but sometimes you may see that developmentally in terms of social structure, those children may sometimes fare better in some circumstances. So the
environment can impact the result. So listen, you talked a little bit about cue markers, and I said, well, how did you know at home? But what was the first sign for you that you clued into that like, I guess if that's the right term, what was your cue marker that made you think, hey, maybe ASD?
Yeah, it was funny enough, as an example, with my first daughter, she really had a sense of, she was starting to look at me. There was cues where she was physically looking at me around the age of about 11, 12 months. There was some consistent eye contact, but then there was a point around between 15 to 18 months where all of a sudden that eye contact started to actually drop off. And also I was talking to her, and even the sound of my voice wasn't cueing her, and even calling her by her name, she wasn't responding. And so that's kind of where some of those, that was the initial first sign, was the no eye contact, the no in regards to how she was responsive, and also to some of the things that she started to do, like her words. She started to say things like mom, dad. She would say words. One of the other things that she said too was horse, which is normally actually a pretty difficult word to initially say. But she tried to say it. It was still pretty difficult. But then all of a sudden, her vocabulary between 15 to 18 months started to peter off. She had about 5 words that she started to roughly start to try and say. And then all of a sudden, she started going back to babbling again, almost like she wasn't even hearing anything. And then she started saying almost like, it's an interesting way to kind of say, because each child, again, any child on the autism spectrum is different in terms of how they're expressing. But she was babbling in such a sense that she was going, dick, 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 like she was actually making sounds. And it was really interesting because it was almost like it was going backwards in a way. So I went to my family doctor and I said, I really see some concern here, and you may want to even take a look at her eyes, because she's actually not even keeping focus either. Her eyes actually even started to shift left and right. So we were a little concerned because we're going, okay, there's some things here that we see. And the doctor, our family doctor, and he's awesome, by the way, he looked at things and he goes, yeah, Linda, I do see a couple markers here. And he's like, Linda, I don't want to put my own bias on things. He's like, I do myself have 2 girls, and both of my girls, because they're twins, they're also on the spectrum as well. And I'm like, okay. He's like, there's a couple similarities. And he's like, I'm concerned too. How about we do a referral to One Kid's Place here, which is in North Bay. We'll do a referral through One Kid's Place. We'll go through the pediatric clinic. And that's kind of how we started the ball rolling. And even with my second daughter, some of the similar markers with Emma also occurred with my second daughter as well. So it was interesting to see, because they really gave us a better window and an indication. And those were really the first signs. And it was almost repeated as well in my second daughter.
So when these markers happened, at the time you didn't think, hey, ASD. You just thought, what is this, right?
Exactly. Right. At the time, I knew it was probably some form of developmental delay, because at the time I had done some additional reading to just to kind of see, what types of developmental delays occur during developmental milestones. Right. And it's funny. So like this was back in 2005, 2006 at the time. And at that, even at 2005, 2006, some things were getting better technology wise, but even from the general practitioner's perspective, and even the health units at the time, you probably remember this even with having your own children too. They would give you pamphlets of saying, oh, this is what your child's milestones need to be. And this is what your child should be meeting. And that's actually, so I would look at that and look at the checklist almost implicitly and just be like, oh, look at that. I was like, okay, she's meeting that. And then I'm like, oh gosh, and this is like a red area. Right. So I even brought back that sheet even to my doctor and was like, yeah, this is a concern.
So Linda, as a parent facing the possibility that their child may have ASD, do you recall what was what your first reaction was? Did you go through a process to come to terms with what you were dealing with that might have taken some time? Or did you just speed through it and start looking for access to help?
That's a really good question, because I know a lot of parents, they face this type of diagnosis differently. And I respect it all, because how you're going through it in terms of mental processing it's all different. And for myself personally, I had to kind of come to terms, especially with my first one. I knew that there was an inclination. And so for me, I wanted answers. I'm always the type of person where I'm not, I don't shy away from getting the answers, but it's a fearful thing. And you kind of think about it and you almost think to yourself, is your life over at this point? Not really over per se, but a lot of parents, you kind of come to that pattern and you think to yourself, what am I in for in my life? What's going to happen? And also, is my child going to get the best quality of life that they really should be getting? Right. So there's a lot of initial questions that you always kind of go by, because then you go, was it something I did? Did I do something? Was I the problem? Because then when you look at something and you think, okay, was I the problem? Am I at fault for this? So there's a lot of things and swirling in your brain, so to speak. What I kind of did was, in order to kind of get over the hump of thinking, hey, maybe this is my fault, I wanted answers. And I thought, this is the best coping strategy for me to really kind of get through it, is talk to doctors, talk to specialists, find out what I can do, because that kind of almost acted, I think, almost as like a mask or a Band-Aid in a way, to kind of, deal with the potential mental health aspect of it too. So one of the things that I did was I leaned on heavily with my family practitioner, but then when I was connected through to our pediatric department, they connected us in One Kid's Place through to social workers, to the psychiatric team, as well as to the behavior therapists too, which was great because they gave me a better definition and a way of being able to scratch the surface. Because the moment I started to get traction in terms of appointments, going through the developmental clinic panel, that was the first stage of everything. And actually getting answers in the developmental clinic panel gave me a bit of hope, because I thought to myself, okay, you know what? There's a little bit of a diagnosis here, but I understand that with autism. And when they did give me the diagnosis, I thought to myself, you know what? This is a bridge. It's a bridge to other things that my child can get access to. And with the hopes, and when I started meeting with other service providers, which included HANDS and HANDS Family Help Network and other groups here, I can't tell you how thankful I was for how supportive people were, especially even in the beginning, because I feel as a parent that is the most critical time that you need that support, especially as you're getting a diagnosis, because in a lot of cases, I think I was fairly lucky where some parents may not feel that. So you have to really attach yourself to those supports.
So Linda,
because without them, you won't have that hope.
Linda, it sounds like you went through a bit of a self-reflection process at the beginning, and then you turned to, hey, what kind of help can I get? But I think to your point, there's no script for how a parent will go through this. No. There are some things that might be common to the reflection, but for parents who might be dealing with this, there's no right or wrong way that you're dealing with this. I think it's just to, and I think we're getting there, but it's just to rely on some resources and frame the experience you're about to have, if that's possible. Now, you've talked about you've named a bunch of different organizations, it seems. And you're talking about access to service and things like that. When we talk about access to service for help, what is that, like, what does it mean? And I know you talked about, hey, I talked to my doctor, and I think most of us here, you have a doctor, you have some sort of medical point that you start with. But what types of help are out there for you as a parent and for the children and in some of these organizations that you've mentioned?
Yeah, that's a great point, because a lot of times parents, especially in Ontario, I find, are really trying to navigate between the sea, and I always like to say the sea or the ocean of service providers that are really out there in terms of our province, even across Canada too, as it is, because each province realistically is different in terms of the way that their government funding is structured provincially. The thing that I always like to remind parents is that when you attach yourself per your region to service providers, the biggest advocates that you can always work with are the individuals who perform the initial diagnosis and then reach back into other groups. For example, the Canadian Association for Mental Health. That is the first and foremost pinnacle in terms of Canadian-wide research, but also there's different organizations provincially through Autism Ontario. Autism Ontario is actually the center area for all hub of services that are approved through the ministry, which is quite helpful in that way because they also have what's called an abacus. The abacus in Autism Ontario actually provides individuals with the resources of who to contact locally to their region. In the northern region, for example, in my case, our hub is through HANDS, the Family Help Network, who does the, as an example, does the regional assessments and the funding setup for the intake and forms through the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. And then through there, they then send out those additional resourcing, which you have a choice between selecting a private therapist, so privately and going off on your own, or you can do it regionally, which is through that funding model, specifically through the government, where you work directly with the service provider.
So let me understand.
Like One Kid's Place.
Let me understand this, Linda. So it's not just the help that you would get to get you through this, but there's also a funding part to the help that folks can access.
There is, and there's actually a specific funding pot. There's actually multiple. The first and foremost would be the funding pot that's specifically for autism services, which is known as the Ontario Autism Program, so OAP.
Okay.
The OAP program, which is formalized, it can be accessed through Autism Ontario and registering through your regional provider. In addition to that, once you've actually registered and you have assigned to you an intensive services coordinator, an intensive services coordinator can also connect you through to other respite service funding pots, which are available locally and provincially, as well through the ministry, which is things like special services at home, and also assistance for children with severe disabilities. So those are both ministry-based programs, but there's multiple programs across the province, such as Easter Seals and different funding pots that are available through community living organizations.
Are these funding pots easy to access, or is it hey, I have to fill out this application and I might hear in 6 months or so? Like, do you have the experience to say, yeah, you know what, they're mostly very effective and efficient and all that, or is it something a parent should prepare for some frustrations for? Or?
Oh, for sure. And that's a great question, because a lot of parents ask about that. The biggest thing is being organized. I find if you're really organized with your children's developmental needs and you have everything in order, keep all of your forms, keep all of your documentation, especially for their needs, and having an individualized support plan, because those actually feed into the respite forms. So when we talk about funding specifically for therapy and also for respite services, the most complicated of all of them, personally speaking, is getting yourself established initially with Ontario Autism Program, so with the OAP. That's the first part, because that's just a long, arduous process, which technically it's because when you really think about it, it's not really just the forms, but it's really just waiting. It's the waiting time period, which it can take between 2 months to 6 months, depending upon what's happening, and also the wait list, and also the needs of the child, as well as the region. But the other respite services, so for example, if you qualify for respite services, and more often than not, about 99% of families always qualify for it, but a lot of the services that you're going to apply for, each one of them is different. And I'll be honest, when it comes down to respite services and respite funding, the easiest one to apply for 9 times out of 10 is like the community living funding pots regionally. Right. Those are the easiest one. They're done yearly, and you have yearly reviews. You can put in the processes for it, and you work with community living directly, and they will do most of the forms for you. They actually work with you directly. Whereas some of the more complicated ones are things like assistance for children with severe disabilities and special services at home, so ACSD and SSAH.
Right.
Those two funding models, they are ministry run. They are yearly reviewed as well, but the forms on them are quite complicated. But the thing is, though, you can get assistance locally through a case manager. So you can actually apply either through community living, or your regional area may have a community counseling center. And if they have a community counseling center that's designated towards special exceptionalities for helping families, those case managers can be allocated to you to help you with filling out the forms.
So Linda, it sounds like from a service perspective, once you get into the system, you have access to the service. For the funding,
That's right.
For the funding part of it, it seems like some of them have some sort of sunset days, some sort of annual, I've got to reapply sort of thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right.
Okay.
You have to reapply frequently, whereas like SSCH, that one rolls over every year. So when you apply once, you apply one time, but you can reapply if your child's needs change.
There sure is a lot of information. I think you said, hey, it's important to stay organized. And when you say stay organized, I'm thinking I'd have to have folders of okay, these are my services, these are my funding, these are my results, a catalog at home. And that might sound a little overwhelming to folks, eh?
It can, yeah, because when you look at the specific catalogs and things like that are available, I always find the best approach, because if you feel, and especially in the situation, you may feel very overwhelmed. And especially when you're first getting a diagnosis for your child, more often than not, parents feel overwhelmed and they're just like, what am I supposed to do from here? The best course of measure in most cases is to visit the Autism Ontario website and go to the portal and specifically find your local chapter. Because when you find your local chapter, a lot of the Autism Ontario representatives that are AO employees specifically are there to actually help and provide service navigation in case you do need help. As well, if you're on Facebook, there's a lot of the Autism Ontario local groups to different regions. For example, in North Bay, we're known as the Northeast region, which covers between North Bay, some areas of Timmins, and also some areas of like Timiskaming Shores, and it just extends out further, just going through like Asterville, Powassan, and our different areas.
So you're naming a lot of Ontario resources and Ontario locations. You may not know the answer to this next question. I imagine that other provinces across Canada might have similar type of programs, or maybe you do know. Is Ontario more advanced, or?
I would say in some senses, Ontario is very mature. I would say that we're probably one of the most mature in terms of autism services. But you do have other provinces such as British Columbia, which British Columbia is more on a private model. But they do have facilities that are very, very similar to Ontario, but their funding structure is just different.
So, Linda, you also said, we're talking about access to service. And we talked just briefly about, you mentioned a couple of times, well, this process could take 2 to 6 months. This other one could take 3 months. Mm-hmm. When you searched for access to help, would you say it was easy? And did you experience any of those delays? And how did it impact your kids and your family while you're kind of waiting for either I need to get into a program or, gosh, I could use some funding here because this is taking its toll? Did you have to deal with that?
Yeah, that's I have a really fine example for that, because when you have children on the autism spectrum, especially ones that have more complex needs, and when I talk about complex needs, I'm not just talking about communication, I'm also talking about mental health. And that could be a high degree of, like, for example, when you think about ADHD or even oppositional defiance disorder, so ODD. Additionally, there could be things such as obsessive compulsive disorder or self-harm, self-regulation. So a lot of those different comorbidities as it relates to mental health are really hard to struggle with, because I found even over the years, it's been difficult to access different programs and really know about them without really digging deep. And most parents on average do not know about what's available to them, in addition to programs, especially if their child is breaking down in terms of mental health. One program that we're recently been accessing is called Children's Parent Resource Institute. So for short, they're known as CPRI. You can actually check out their information on their website too. They're also a ministry organization within the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, and also the Ministry of Health. Their program really has a definement specifically around criteria that if a child has special needs complexities, and when I say special, like special exceptionalities, it really contributes to if a child is committing an act of self-harm, that it's repetitive potential violence and things like that too, when you think of harm to others or even harm to self. And also they have challenges with communicating, as well as also education. So those different facets of it have to be evaluated, but CPRI is both an on-site and a outpatient clinical service that actually provides that to all individuals across Ontario. Most times in previous years, they were really only servicing catchment for anything south of Barrie. But in some circumstances, based on the complex needs of the child, they can go through intake and receive those services. When you speak to the level of time waiting to it, we had to wait. As an example, with my oldest, we had to wait about, I would say, between 6 to 8 months to actually get into the service itself. And the only reason is because there's many children across the province that they're waiting in line. You know what I mean? So this is a great service, and I cannot speak better things. Like, I almost cry every time I talk about the service, because it's one of those things that when my oldest had access to it and she was able to go through the program, she received the 24/7 care around the clock to really diagnose my oldest with the proper definition of what she should have been getting access to.
Boy, that's I'm processing the 6 to 8 months, and then getting to the point where you're actually getting the diagnosis that you need, right? So that light at the end of the tunnel, and then actually having it, right?
Exactly.
Linda, as you've taken us through this journey, you've said this a couple of times, more than a couple of times. You keep saying on the spectrum. And I know that it's in the title of, like the spectrum is part of the ASD title. What does that mean? What does being on the spectrum mean? Is it like a range of something?
Yes, it's actually considered. So when they say the spectrum, it's more like they're talking about an umbrella diagnosis. When we really look at the umbrella diagnosis, it really just classifies specifically from the DSM-5 perspective, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's really classifying it as a neurological difference or a condition, which sometimes some folks associate some negativity around it. But the thing is, it's really just more in terms of the fact that it classifies it as a sense of, instead of a functioning label per se, it's more like a medical model based on an intervention around social interactions, how really some individuals may be either lower functioning versus higher functioning. That's why they typically say a spectrum, because a spectrum is kind of like a rainbow in a sense. Because when you think about it, one person on the spectrum doesn't always act the same or react, Linda, or express the same as well.
You mentioned earlier, you said things like OCD and ADD. Would those be considered on the spectrum?
And that's actually a good point. When you look at those different classification levels, an individual can experience that type of label or that type of expression. But when someone's on the autism spectrum, that person may experience almost either one of them or all of them.
Oh.
So it's almost like it's an interesting reverberance in a sense, where you look at it from the other side, where someone may, let's just say as an example, a child may be diagnosed specifically with oppositional defiance disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Right.
So if it's ADHD, if they just get that one label, they may not see the whole picture. In some cases, if they have a global developmental delay, which is basically all across the board, that child may potentially be specifically on the autism spectrum, where they may be seeing those additional mental health experiences, as well as also areas where developmentally they may be considered different in terms of the way that their experiences are too.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, there's so much to unpack, and I'm learning so much. I'm hoping that the listeners are learning just as much, and I keep thanking you for your time. Listen, living with someone with autism and going through the experience, you talked about some self-reflection. Did at any point you see this as a negative, or do you find it challenging in terms of daily living today? Has it changed your perspective on life at all?
It really has. Honestly, I think that there's a lot of stress to it. I'm not gonna paint a pretty picture in that regard. I do say that when you go through an experience like this, the biggest challenge is it can impact your personal relationships. It can impact your friendships. It can impact the relationship that you have with your spouse. It does teach you to become stronger to a certain degree, but at the same time, it also leaves yourself kind of raw and a little vulnerable too. I always find that the biggest impact that it has, especially on your family, is the dynamic. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a lot of families out there that it's hard. It is a hard experience, and it's one where it can break families. It can absolutely cause damage to some families. The biggest thing is, I always found, and it's the biggest struggle always, is you have to learn how to communicate better. And I'm always learning every day, because there's lots of things that I even still have to work on as being a better individual with communication. And I think that for most spouses, as you work through this kind of thing, the biggest thing is that, seek therapy too, because even during the pandemic, it's one of the hardest things. I know with our programs, and even especially with other employers, you have things such as the EFAP program and other groups that can help. And some people don't use it as often as that they really should. And it's free. There's free therapy programs. There's also therapy programs as well through community service providers that are offered for parents. And we ourselves been through quite a bit, and probably more than what most parents have ever been through. And that's why I always tell folks, if they ever do need a support group to ever reach out to as well, that's always something to look out for, especially proper support groups to look out for other families. I would strongly suggest that, and never stop looking for the answers. That's the biggest thing, is that the science behind this is just getting better. Our family is also, we've gone through the genetics testing realm, and the answers that we've even gotten through that has been truly amazing, especially for our oldest. It actually helped to provide a better scope even to the CPRI program, because we were able to even look and see with my oldest that the genetic sequencing came back as showing a genetic code disposition called CNKSR2, which came actually from me. I actually carried it. It didn't express fully in me, but it expressed in her. So that's why when people always try to say, oh, well, something had to do with vaccinations, or it was caused by a parenting style, or, autism, it's probably associated with an illness. No. So the things that what autism isn't, autism is not an illness or a disease. It is not temporary. It is not contagious. Autism is not caused by vaccinations. It is not caused by parenting styles, and it does not go away in adulthood. These are the things that autism isn't. But autism, when we look at genetic markers, there are some contributing factors that behind the science in it, it's becoming very interesting and very provocative in terms of what we can find in terms of answers now.
Linda, you're well informed, and I'll say an inspiration to me, and I imagine to many others if they're listening to this, and some possibilities. Listen, I appreciate you being here to do this. As we bring this to conclusion, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, if anyone ever needs assistance in terms of really just reach out, finding out who to talk to, that's what I'm here for. I was originally one of the co-presidents for Autism Ontario here in the Northeast region. I was there within 3 years. I still help out from time to time, just within family supports. So if anyone ever needs any help, please feel free to reach out to Autism Ontario first and foremost. But if you ever do need some assistance, let even myself know, and I'd be more than happy to answer some questions.
Linda, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your story with us. Thank you for continuing to be an advocate as you provide valuable education opportunities for anyone that is interested. I wish you and your family well. Thank you again, and take care.
Thank you.
All right, now to our featured musical guest for this July podcast, and it's Holdsy. Holdsy is a solo punk project founded by multi-instrumentalist Ryan Holdsworth, who's based out of Welland, Ontario. Thank you, Welland, for giving us Ryan. The project was fueled by the boredom of the COVID-19 lockdown and restrictions. The first release was in February of 2021 with the melodic punk single Worried. The second single, Coast Fire, which you're going to hear here today, was released in March 2021. On June 11th of this year, Holdsy released their first EP, Guard Down, and it's available on all streaming platforms, and I encourage you to have a listen. Today, we're going to listen to the song Coast Fire, which came about to Ryan a couple of years back, and it was built on the riff in the intro and verses, and he said the lyrics were rewritten a couple of times with the same theme in mind, but he was experimenting with just being a little bit more descriptive. Now, I admit, when I first heard Holdsy, I thought to myself, it's got a little bit of the Sex Pistols influence here. Have a listen for yourself, folks, and enjoy the music of Ryan Holdsworth.
Summer
folks. That's Ryan Holdsworth from Welland, Ontario with Coast Fire. Check out the new tunes, the new EP, Guard Down. That's Holdsy. Look for Holdsy on Spotify and iTunes and other platforms. Thank you, Ryan, for providing the energy and the fantastic music for us today on the Go On with Guido podcast. All right, and now before we get to our next segment, a couple of words from our Promote Canada sponsors.
Hi, I'm Richard Chase, introducing Chaser's Fresh Juice, a local business in Toronto. We've been in business for over 20 years, initially supporting our local Toronto area and now servicing all of Canada. Chaser provides fresh organic juices, ingredients including citrus zest, dehydrated garnishes, and fresh citrus peels to enhance any cocktail or recipe you can think of. We have successfully supplied restaurants, distilleries, craft breweries, and bakeries across the country. Reach out to orders@chasersjuice.com for any questions you may have. We are a customized fresh juice company, and I'm sure we can help you. Thank you.
Recipes at My Table is a work of family, love of food, and sharing of stories. The stories keep the memories alive and make every day a party in my kitchen. Join me for the sharing of traditional Italian recipes and so much more. Visit me at www.recipesatmytable.com.
Welcome to the Go On with Guido podcast, fellow listeners. Welcome to a new segment called Four Fans Talk Sports, where everyone here is expressing their opinions as fans, just like you. There are no network obligations, no sponsor pressures, aside from the Coke that I'm drinking. Coke, if you want to throw any cash our way, we'll take it. Just kidding. No product placement. And just pure fandom mania. I welcome the panel that we have here. Brian, who comes to us sometimes from Barrie, Ontario, and sometimes from Lakefield, Ontario, and sometimes wherever the road just takes him, I suppose. We've got Clark from the greater Detroit, Michigan. I hope that's correct there, Clark. And just to keep him in check, because, you know, we wanted to make sure we went south of the border there a little bit, balance us out up here in Canada. But if it gets too out of line, Roland is joining us from Windsor, Ontario. So just over the bridge or the tunnel. Is the tunnel still open?
Yeah, it's open.
It's still open. But Tunnel Barbecue isn't open.
Nope.
Clark, did you ever go to Tunnel Barbecue?
Not at all.
Oh my gosh. I loved it. It didn't love me, but it was so good. And the barbecue sauce. Hey, you can get the barbecue sauce at Costco though, I think.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it's really good. So welcome, guys. Welcome to our fan show here. We've got I think 4 or 5 topics that we'll go through today. But before we do that, I asked each of you before the Stanley Cup series started to make a call. I said Habs or Bolts, and give me the games. Roland, what did you say?
I think I told you Montreal in 7.
You did. You said Montreal in 7.
Yeah.
Brian?
I know I said Bolts. I thought it was 6, but I could be wrong. What did I say?
You said Bolts in 6.
Yeah.
And Clark?
I think I was Bolts in 6 as well.
You were Bolts in 6. And man, I didn't want to do this. I didn't make a prediction. I didn't make a forward prediction the entire playoffs. I just used to say, if the Habs will win, it will be because of this. And if the other team will win, it'll be because of this. But I joined the club and I said Habs in 6, and I hope I haven't cursed them. But that's the call. So just game 1 is in the books. Roland, would you change your mind?
No.
Brian?
The Habs.
Yeah, I'm going Bolts in 5.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. All right. How about you, Clark?
I'm going to keep it.
You're
Because my predictions are always wrong anyway. So.
Yeah, I would like to be wrong and have it be the Habs in 5, but
I'm going Bolts in 5 because they got the 6th man, the guy with the striped sweater.
That's some foreshadowing. That's some foreshadowing there, isn't it?
No, I just think they got some good talent on that team.
Well, you know what? That's a pretty good segue, Brian, to the first topic that I wanted to talk about. I know folks might say, "Well, can't you leave the past in the past?" But there's a little bit of a couple of elements to this. Mark Scheifele, his hit, and when you couple that with NHL suspensions, and I want to give you guys some information before I let you loose. Since January 15th, 2021, there's been 53 suspensions or fines in the NHL. When you break it down, there's been 21 suspensions. A couple of the ones, when I reached out to some of you and said, hey, I want to do this topic, a few of you said, well, don't forget Kadri, don't forget Tom Wilson, right? And those guys are out there. Kadri and Wilson were at the highest with 7 and 8 games respectively. And then Mark Scheifele got 4 games of the Winnipeg Jets, got 4 games for his hit on Jake Evans. And that was game 1 of their second round series. Evans just played his first game a couple of nights ago, Monday night for the first time. So he was out for a round and a bit.
Yeah.
What happened during that game, if folks didn't know, and if the 4,000 video streams of the hit, if you haven't seen it, he curled out from behind the net to score an empty net goal. And then Scheifele skated from the other end of the ice as Evans was doing this. And what it looks like from some camera angles, he leans his shoulder into Evans's head as the first point of contact. Evans does this 360 flip. What it looked like being clotheslined in one of those WWE rings. Dated myself with the F. They got the F out, so we don't use it anymore. But they did. They got the. That was a campaign. They actually sold shirts that said W. Really? They did. Get the F out. Anyways, so that happens. But here's the thing: a couple of things Scheifele said, and a couple of things really bugged me. Like I was like, man, like I really liked Mark Scheifele right up until that point. But first he kind of put the onus on somebody else. Well, I wasn't expecting that length of a suspension. I was pretty shocked, but that's the NHL Department of Player Safety. I think it was pretty excessive. It's their decision. I like this one. I thought I was going to be shut down by Philip Deneau, Scheifele said, but the Department of Player Safety shut me down. And all I could think of was, Mark, you shut yourself down. That's who shut Mark Scheifele down. But anyways, so there's other parts here, but I'm going to leave those alone. Brian, you're the resident defender sometimes when you and I talk. What's your take on this stuff?
Well, listen. First, nobody wants to see any player get hurt, and I, for one, I've been heartened by how the game's changing for the better. I believe it has been changing for the better over the years. Gone are the days of the old Don Cherry rock'em sock'em hockey that, in my mind, really tried to promote that style of play, and I was never a big fan of the old Broad Street bullies where they took liberties with star players and won more with brawn than with skill. And heck, look, if you think back to a time where a player like Scott Stevens with some of his bone-crunching hits that today would garner a suspension, he used to be celebrated and, he was considered an all-star. So having said that, though, chippiness and scrums and big hits have always been a feature of playoff hockey, which is the battle and going to war. So, but I have a hard time. I've had a hard time. You and I've discussed, Guido, Tom Wilson of the Washington Capitals, who's a consistent offender, a multiple repeat offender, and plays more of that Broad Street bully style of hockey than anything else, more the tough guy than the skill. And even though there are some that still celebrate that style of play, I don't count myself one amongst those. But how he went unpunished, completely unpunished by the league when he ragdolled Artemi Panarin in that final or one of the final games of the season against the Rangers and Caps, that's beyond me. So that's why I take exception to the penalty that was dished out to Mark Scheifele. A first-time offender not someone who has that style of play on a consistent basis, has never done it before, got caught up in the heat of the moment playing that game, and he took out Jake Evans. And yeah, the fall was a little bit bad, but I don't think what we got to look at is the intent to injure versus what happened as an injury. And I for one, don't believe that Scheifele set out to injure Jake Evans. I don't believe he did. So that's why I take exception to the length of the penalty. I thought it should have been a game, maybe 2 at the max, but 4 games. And I know we're going to talk about referees impacting the outcome of a game. In this case, the director of player safety impacted the outcome of a series, in my opinion.
So thanks. You said it. There's a few things there, and boy, I'd like to jump on a few things, but I know, Clark, you probably have a few things there. Roland, you're bottling up a few things. Roland, you want to go? You Roland? Yeah.
Just on the Scheifele hit. Boy, that was a tough hit. He could have stopped. I watching that game and watching it in real time, I thought after he hit him, I thought, why did he do that? The puck was already in the net and he nailed him. And the intent was there because he took a lot of strides, to go in and hit him like that. So when I heard of the suspension, they were talking on TV, the analysts, 1, maybe 2 games. Evans was out for the rest of that series and part of the other series too, right? So it's like, 4 games to me, like for him to be out of the Montreal series, I was happy. He never came back. I didn't want him to come back for even longer than that. So just because of that kind of hit, that shouldn't be in the game anymore, right? They don't want that hit in the game anymore. And even though Scheifele's a good player, a clean player, has never done that before, he's never had a history of doing that, you got to wonder what's going into a player's mind to do something like that. And there's got to be a deterrent, right? There has to be a deterrent for even the clean players to think to do something like that. And I was happy with the outcome of the suspension.
So you thought 4 games was enough?
Yeah, it was enough. Even if it was the first time, you took a player out of the playoffs.
Clark, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with Roland. I mean, I thought I was expecting 3 games, 4 games. I don't have a problem with. It was just it was an asinine play. It was completely unnecessary. He had every option to not do that, right. And he didn't. He made that choice, and you hear his statements after the fact. It's not anything about I didn't need to do that. It's about woe is me for how long I'm suspended. They took me out of the series. No, you took yourself out of the series. That didn't need to happen. There's a whole separate thing with Kadri and Tom Wilson where if you're giving Scheifele 4 games, how are you not giving them more? But that's a separate thing. Like I said, they have been afraid to whatever reason it is. They've been afraid to really throw the book at Tom Wilson, and I can't say why there, but that that makes this one look worse, but not wrong.
Yeah, I'm so Clark. I'm with you on the Tom Wilson one too, and that Kadri one, I don't know. I mean, I've never been a Kadri. He's a great player. I thought there was always a bit of attitude on the ice that he could have lost and still been a great player. And I thought his was a bit excessive, but even that, you look at Wilson and Kadri's list, it's long. Like they got history. And I think that's where Brian, you're coming in going, hey, look, Scheifele's a first-time offender. Like if we're applying the rules the way we've applied the rules, then Scheifele's a first-time offender, and let's make sure that that's taken care of. But here's something like Clark, you touched on this a bit. I'm going to say the selfish factor, right? Where I didn't really hear a lot of concern from Scheifele when it came to Evans. I didn't hear, there was somewhere in the papers, there was a quote like, I hope he's better or something like that. But there wasn't any remorse for me. It was like, hey, I did it. I did the right thing. I would do it again. Here's a quote from Scheifele. There's a minute left in the game. We just scored. It's a 1-goal game. My only thought in my mind is to prevent a goal. I'm okay with that. And I've watched that replay. Brian, I'm a Habs fan. You're going to call me out as a Habs fan so many times. I admit it. I'm a Habs fan. You know I am. But here's the thing. I watched that from so many different angles. And he had a chance to go for the puck. If he wanted to prevent the goal. Now, I'm saying this as a person who's not a good skater. so, you know, for a long, long time, the way I stopped on the ice was the boards were my friend. Hey, right?
Guido, listen, I don't discount that it was a stupid play. I don't discount that he shouldn't have been suspended. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying where I take issue is the amount of games and taking him out of the entire series. And to his point, and his I got no problem. I do have a problem with him not reaching out to see, you know, how Jake Evans was, because certainly Corey Perry reached out to, and the rest of the Canadiens team reached out when John Tavares was accidentally kneed. There's no question he was kneed by Corey Perry, but there was no intent there, and that's pretty clear to see. But I have an issue with the amount of the games and truly impacting a series on one play and one stupid decision. So, yeah, you know, Clark and Roland have said he took himself out of the series. He did, but the director of player safety ultimately had that decision, and I think he gave an excessive penalty. I think you can't mistake that as there shouldn't have been a suspension. But I think if you're going to apply the rules of suspensions consistently, then the 4-game suspension on Scheifele was inconsistent with what they've done. I agree.
I agree that it was inconsistent, Brian. I agree it was inconsistent. And I take it a step further, and I say, not only was it inconsistent, I just wanted to, like, for me, Wilson should have got more games. And Scheifele, for me,
be out of the league. I don't like watching the guy play. I think he's just
Roland.
He's just a goofy player.
Roland, you have something?
Oh, what was I going to say? Well, the other part of that too is how that hit affects the other team, right? So now you have Jake Evans. He's out of their lineup for more than 4 games, right? I've always looked at that and you know, I struggle with that, saying, okay, this player did this to another team. That player's gone now, and it could be any player, really, right? It could be a star player or Jake Evans, who's in his early 20s. But he's been playing well, so he's gone now. And if they only gave Scheifele 1 game, he's back into the lineup, and he's a good player for Winnipeg, right? So again, there's got to be consequences for what you do, and I know that we have to find a balance there, like how long. I was fine with the 4 games. I thought, good, you're gone. You did a stupid thing, you're gone. Even though you're a smart, good player, never done that before, but. This is the price to pay for doing something like that.
I wanted more games. I thought 4 wasn't enough, but I say that and say that Tom Wilson's suspension wasn't enough either. So I'm consistent in saying I think the NHL needs to suspend with higher consequence. Clark, you have something, Clark?
That's exactly where I am. Yeah, that's exactly where I am. This was inconsistent, but this was right. It's the other ones that are wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got some agreement. Not bad. We've got some agreement. Still not 100%. So for armchair observers, not bad. So a little bit of segue, and Brian, you started to touch on this a bit too. I wanted to transition into NHL refereeing. Our friends, the Stripes. and the question I have here is the NHL facing a referee integrity issue? And some precursor to this. March 2021, the Predators are playing the Wings, and our friend Tim Peel, referee, gets caught on a hot mic talking about evening up penalties on purpose. So there's a part of a quote says, "It wasn't much, but I wanted to get some expletive penalty against Nashville early in and then the mic gets cut off." He was working the game with Kelly Sutherland. And I'm mentioning names like, by the way, Peel, Sutherland, O'Rourke, Lee, for a reason. Because if you look these guys up, there's a consistent issue with the way that these guys are reffing. Since that game, Tim Peel, he hasn't reffed a game since, And I think, and sometimes I hate using the word I think because I feel like I'm putting transitioning the onus to somewhere else. But he was close to retirement, so maybe it was an easy decision for the NHL. Maybe they said, "Oh, well, look at us! Look what we're doing. We're trying to take care of the game." I don't believe it. I don't buy it. But that's what we know. That culture's there. We know it, and we've suspected it for a long time. We've called it, out ourselves and said, "Oh, that can't be right," or "This guy's doing that." But we heard it. Like, that was the first time we actually heard it. Now, fast forward to the playoffs in 2021, and I already mentioned Chris Lee, and I'm sorry, I have no idea how Chris Lee, I hope he's listening. I hope you're listening. I hope you're listening to the Go On with Guido podcast. You need help. I don't know NHL. I don't know how the NHL is still allowing Chris Lee to referee games. He has stood and watched players get punched in the face, cross-checked in the ribs, hit to the face with a stick, and no call. Then he'll turn around and you get some sort of phantom call where a guy, whiffs a stick at his arm or something. I don't know what the reffing standard is, Brian, and I'm starting with you because you do reffing on the side. You've reffed and you've played. I don't know what the standard is, and I don't know how the NHL fixes it.
Well, I'm gonna give you a little segue of my own. So if I close my eyes, I can hear the legendary voice of Bob Cole saying, "Just let them play, or put away the whistles. They're gonna let the two teams decide." And how many times have we heard Bob or countless others use that phrase? So, yes, you mentioned, as someone who's refereed many hockey games, I appreciate it when the games are truly decided by the two teams that are playing. And aside from me calling definitive offsides, grave infractions that impact the scoring play, and getting the goal scorers and the assist makers correct, I appreciate when I've had little, if any, involvement or impact on the outcome of the game. But you're right. There's no question that the refereeing in the NHL is again, a hot topic of debate. But to say that the NHL is facing a full-fledged referee integrity issue is pretty tough for me to buy into. And I'll tell you why. For as long as teams have been cheering loudly for the respective team, or fans have been cheering for their teams, they've also been booing and chirping at the refs for missed calls. That's part of the game. And even up calls have always been a part of the game as long as I can remember. Tim Peel got caught saying something stupid on a mic, but if you think that hasn't been going on since the game started, you're sadly mistaken. Refs are human. They make a mistake, and if they think they've given an advantage to one team by maybe a suspect call, they're going to look for another opportunity to even it up on a call that otherwise they might not make. So, but having said that, I've seen some brutal games where the refs factored in way too much. The European refs in the 1972 Russia-Canada Summit Series were absolutely atrocious. American referee Stacey Livingston in the 2002 Canada-USA Women's Gold Medal game called 11 penalties against Canada, 8 straight penalties. And if you watch that game, you're going to go, where was the penalty? And despite her calling an atrocious game, Canada still won the gold medal. And I'll be honest with you, that recent display by Chris Lee reminded me of a ref like Stacey Livingston that truly got lost and caught up in the game. Every ref's going to miss a call or two or make a call that one team totally disagrees with. That happens. But when a ref totally lost control of the game, that's where it's brutal. I'm still smarting from the 1993 missed high sticking call by Kerry Fraser. Wayne Gretzky high stick on Doug Gilmour. Gretzky got a pass because he's a superstar, and that robbed Canada of seeing a Toronto-Montreal final. But I'm over it. I
don't think so.
I'm over it.
Didn't that get put?
Let me finish.
Go ahead. You're on a roll.
There are some who say call the game the same all year round. I don't buy into that either. A penalty in the regular season might not be the same as a penalty in the playoffs. The integrity in the regular season is nowhere near, or the intensity, in the regular season is nowhere near the intensity in the playoffs. And we've all come to appreciate those net rushes, face washes, crease scrums, and love taps to the shins and wrists that happened during the playoffs. And guys like Gallagher from Montreal and Marchand from Boston have made their bread and butter doing that stuff. So if they called every penalty, those two guys would have a front row in the sin bin for most of the game. So in my mind, the reffing is pretty good. It's not a huge issue. We had a couple of bad games by Chris Lee that were absolutely atrocious, but I don't think you got a full-fledged issue here.
So there's a lot of history reference. You did your homework. You came prepared to defend. You came prepared the honor of the zebras.
The honor of the stripes. The stripes were taking it in the chin.
Clark, you have an opinion on this? Would the referees in the Detroit Fantasy Hockey Simulated League, are they this biased?
The referees in the DFHL are absolutely impartial. We stand by every decision they make, and I say that as commissioner. I say that as commissioner, just like Gary Bettman says that as commissioner of the NHL every time. And there is always an integrity issue, but that's because the NHL is a business. If the league and its teams wanted something to be different about this, it would be different. They are okay with this for, whatever reason. If you want to make it conspiracy theory, that you can say, oh well, they stopped calling hooking so that worse teams can play up to the level of a better team and make closer games in the playoffs. And more games means more money and more TV revenue and all that. You can go the conspiracy theory route if you want. I'm on board with that. I like the conspiracy theory route. But it doesn't even have to be that. Whatever the reason, the league, its teams want this. And I want to be clear, it's teams because I invoked Bettman earlier, and he is such an easy target. It is not the evil Gary Bettman making horrible refs. If the teams wanted it to be different, it would be different. They're his boss, not the other way around. But then you can always look. You've always been able to look at individual refs and say these guys are going to call the game slightly different. I can pick on Dan O'Halloran for forever because you knew him coming into Detroit, him being a Metro Detroit native too. You expect some help, but him coming into Detroit, he's going to call a goalie interference call on Tomas Holmstrom. It's just going to happen. And that is part of the refs being human. I don't like it. I never liked it as they were happening, especially that particular example. I've got videos. I'll go back and say, look at this BS call he made against Tomas Holmstrom. But it's part of the game. Nobody's perfect. They are going to try and even it out and call it fairly, even if it's not called perfectly.
Are we? So before I move to Roland here, Clark, are we complacent fans then? Are we just accepting? Well, it's the way it's always been. Oh, no, we know that it's going to be this way.
That's why we all get outraged on the internet.
Would it?
No, there's always some angle that we're going to be unhappy with, but that's just how it is. There is no fixing that. I'm doing air quotes here, and that is part of the game. As fans, we're always going to be annoyed. We're always going to go and complain about it and all that. But the game is not the game. The officiating, that's not broken. That is what the league wants. It is a feature, not a bug.
So that's what the league wants. Roland, what do you say?
There has to be some standards. That's what when I'm watching a game, you know what the penalties are. You know, like it's changed so much over the last decade what they call now, which they would never call before. When Mario Lemieux was in the league, when Gretzky was in the league, Mario Lemieux used to have 3 guys on him, like as he's going down the ice. It was crazy. It was nuts. But now, like the standards now, and I was listening to Ray Ferraro the other day where he said, a penalty, what I knew was a penalty 30 years ago should be a penalty now. And that was punching somebody in the face with the ref standing right there. That still has to be called. You can't just stand there and go, I'm going to let that one go, That's still a penalty. And I'm not sure why they're not calling that kind of stuff. And it's against every team. And both series, like the Islanders and Tampa, they were complaining about reffing. I know the Islanders were a lot because they thought, what is going on here, right? So I still think there needs to be that standard where you go, if you do that, that's 2 minutes in the box for you, no matter what, okay? The other little penalties, the touch on the wrist and the little slash here and there, playoff hockey, they shouldn't even be calling stuff like that. But the blatant ones, the cross checks to the back, somebody's flying you hit somebody from behind into the boards, they have to call it, and they haven't. So I don't know why. And, I sit back as a fan, I'm going, why isn't that called? Why isn't that called? It should be called.
So, Brian, you want to, I think you want to say something.
I just think that the thing that we got to remember is there's different categories of penalties, and refs, the refs will call a game. And if I go back to my initial comment of let them play, right? And playoff hockey is a little bit more of a war. So in my mind, there's at least two distinct categories of penalties, or make it three. There's the physical punishment penalties. Roland was talking to me, the punch in the head, the fighting, the roughing, the cross-checking from the back, which I can't stand personally, slashing and boarding, which I call physical punishment. Doesn't really have to do with the play per se or a scoring chance, but it's guys beating the tar out of each other, taking cheap shots at each other. That's one category of penalty. The second category is those that impact the scoring play. So a guy's coming down the ice and a guy hooks him, or he trips him, or he holds them. It impacts the scoring play. Those are the ones that really have an impact on the game. And then there's that third category, which are those goofy penalties, the dreaded puck over the glass, delay a game, or too many men on the ice, which I call those the goofy penalties, which usually are the ones that end up killing the team the most. They never have good luck killing those penalties off. But I think in playoff hockey, the physical stuff, they get away with a little more. Look at your guy Gallagher, and here I'm going on the Montreal, loves to skate into the crease and take a shot at the goalie, or chip away at his glove when he's made the save, or they all do it. I've mentioned it earlier. Gallagher, Marchand, there's many others. That's their bread and butter, and they do it. By your standards, Roland, those guys would be sitting in the box constantly, and you would not like it as a Montreal fan.
Well, let me touch on that a little bit, Brian, because I did a little bit of homework too, and if we want to go back in time, and again, being a Habs fan, I'm calling myself out. You go back and look at the 1993 series, the Los Angeles Kings and the Montreal Canadiens, June 3rd, Game 2. Bear with me. 5:57. Lyle Odeline, 2 minutes. 6:40. Luc Robitaille, hooking. 7:05. Patrice Brisebois, interference. 10:25. Rob Blake, tripping. 10:38. Patrick Waugh, high sticking. 13:01. Tim Waters, holding. 13:01, at the same double penalty, tripping, Kirk Muller. 14:44, Daryl Sador, holding. 17:02, Mathieu Schneider, high sticking. 17:53, Tony Granato, remember Tony Granato? Holding. Guys, that's the first period. That game, 56 minutes in penalties. The next game, Kerry Fraser, June 5th, another 22 minutes in penalties. There's a comment in that game that my good friend, I just imagine he's my good friend, Dick Irving, because I grew up listening to Dick on CBC and calling the games, right? He says in that game, he goes on to say, this is the Kerry Fraser show, right? We're here to watch Kerry Fraser. Now, here's the thing. You watch those games, am I entertained? Completely. It's end-to-end hockey. There's penalties. I don't look at it and I go, oh, he evened it out. I just look at it and I go, man, I don't really like he called those penalties against my team because I want my team to win. But it was a penalty. And when Tony Granato, holds somebody and then Odeline holds somebody, I look at it and I go, hey, they both got called for holding. And it's holding. Now, I don't know the difference. I got no idea. I watch and I think, oh, here's a hold. No, not this time. Oh, wait, now they're going back the other way. Oh, yeah, no, this one's holding. I watched the last game, and here I go. I'm going to go anti-Hab here for a second. John Edmondson clocks, I don't know who it was, Sergachev, it might have been Sergachev, clocks him right in the face with the glove on. And O'Rourke, who was the official, he calls a penalty, right? Justified, do it, right? But you think back to the game, Chris Lee and Dan O'Rourke are reffing, and young Suzuki gets the same punch in the face with the glove on from McCabe. We have footage all over the internet. No call. He turns his head like, oh, there's nothing here to see, right? But then you skate down the other ice and you know, he sniffs the guy's helmet and he gets a 2-minute call. So I don't know. I'm with you. Like, I'm with you guys. I want flow in the game. I do. I want flow in the game. I think there's history on both sides of this argument. It's one of those ones that I think maybe we're both a little bit right, and maybe we're both a little bit over passionate for what we believe in. I don't know.
I subscribe to the let them play, call the really blatant calls, but in playoff, like I hate to see a game decided by a suspect call. But on the same time, I hate to see where it's an obvious trip or an obviously impact on a scoring play.
Yeah.
You know, you would hate it if there's a minute left in the game and a player does a face wash or a punch in a scrum in the crease and he gets called. Now your team's down 2 minutes in what could be a final game because you're calling it consistently. I like the fact that the refs kind of gauge. And they're different. They're all different. They're all human. Just like we got players, we got the Lemieux and Gretzky's that are the superstars, and we got the Marchands and the Gallaghers that are the grinders. Different types of players. You got different kinds of refs with different personalities. And some of these guys, you got to give credit to some of the refs that actually call a great game. We're picking on all the refs that have called what you consider shitty games. That's why I don't think you got a huge issue. You got a couple of bad apples. But you've got a lot of refs that have called some good games and have made that decision. You know what? We're going to let that little face wash or that little tap because you know what? The other guy gave it, and so I'm not calling him. And the boys kind of understand. We're in for that kind of a game. That's where you hear, we went to battle. It was a war on the ice. And you'll say that was an epic game. The Habs won and they won the battle. You'll love it.
No, but I'm okay, Brian. I'm okay with that. But if you go from game one of that and to the other extreme in game two, and again, I'm not a player. How do you do that as a player? How do you know? Like, you got to wait the first 5 minutes of every game to go, what's the rule tonight, right? All right.
But they get a sense of it, I think, after a little while, they get a sense of what that ref's calling. And then every once in a while, that ref makes a complete bogus, certain ref makes a complete bogus thing that throws them off. But I think they kind of know. And the refs chatter with it. Hey, I used to chat with all the players when I was reffing. They kind of knew, the way the game was going to go.
Let's see who's reffing tonight and how it goes. We may never fully agree on this. But while we're doing that, let's switch a little bit. We're going to go to baseball for a second. I'm the worst when it comes to understanding baseball sometimes. I enjoy a live game, and I think I really enjoy the playoffs or whatever, but this caught my eye because I was watching one of the sportscasts, and I thought, I saw the pitcher rushing towards the umpire, and then I saw him taking off his belt and dropping his pants, and I thought, what is going on? What's going on? Why is he undressing? And then they cut from that to another pitcher doing the same, thinking, why are all these pitchers undressing all of a sudden? So then I looked it up. So there's a new rule. It's a new cheat checking rule for pitchers. And apparently pitchers have dominated this season in baseball. There were 6 no-hitters, and the whole no-hitter thing, it could break the record of 8 no-hitters, which was set in, I can't believe this is right, 1884, like 1884. I was like, really? Is that really the right number? Pitchers are also holding hitters to a league low batting averages that haven't been seen since 1968. That predates my birth. And so obviously I don't understand it.
I was around.
So yeah, just on that note, I have not been alive to witness a Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup. Sorry. So Major League Baseball goes off and enforces this new guideline around pitching. And I don't understand this. Maybe one of you guys can tell me. Using foreign substances, but nobody will tell me what the foreign substances are. on baseballs during games. The league said the new guidelines will empower umpires, and it certainly did empower them, to search pitchers for foreign substances that will take effect. It took effect on June 21st. Players caught cheating will be ejected from the contest. I like this part. And suspended with pay. So you could cheat, but we're still going to pay you for 10 games while you're sitting at home thinking about how you cheated. So now we've got these pitchers who are throwing fits. They're undressing. They're taking stuff off or whatever. Have you guys, is this an issue? Was pitchers cheating an issue? And what are they using? What's going on? What are they putting on baseballs to make this an issue? Clark?
So I'm not a fan of changing the rules in the middle of the season. I get taking a look and seeing, wow, the numbers aren't what we expect this year and we need to make a change. I really think you got to ride that out. I don't like changing it in the middle of the season. It just feels like I'm putting your hand on the scale a bit too much there. So I don't like that. I guess I don't get baseball enough. I love baseball. I love going down and watching a baseball game. I love baseball highlights so that I don't have to sit through the whole game to see the awesome plays. I don't get I don't necessarily get the science behind all the different substances and how much that I get. Okay, it affects spin rate and that makes it hard. I hear all these things and I get it, but I don't get it. It's just something that seems like people are trying way too hard here. But you're making that much money playing baseball. Maybe that's what you do. You try and find the craziest way you can get an advantage. And that's just kind of out of my head for me. But baseball's always had, to me, this kind of goes to a lot of the unwritten rules of baseball. That, there are always the things you don't do. And this feels like pitchers are upset because umps are upstaging them. And the one thing you don't do is upstage anyone in baseball. You don't flip your bat. You don't celebrate too hard, don't you? And so now you've got pitchers being upstaged by umps. So they're going to upstage the ump right back. They're going to start stripping off. And it becomes theater. And it's not about making the game better. It's about whose ego is getting stoked the most. And I don't know. I don't get it. I would have waited until, if I were Major League Baseball, I would have waited until the off season and hopefully come up with a better solution.
Maybe they've got some sort of like when you said that, I was thinking, wasn't it back in the day? Wasn't it the Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa controversy where they rattled off so many home runs and then there was a drug substance. Maybe they still have like flashbacks of that, thinking something's going on that shouldn't.
There's certainly that. There was a thing with Sosa and corked bats, if I recall.
Right, that's it. Yeah.
So it was steroids and cork bats, and hey, maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's let pitchers use whatever they want if the hitters are going to use whatever they want. If every sport seems to want more scoring, go for it. Let cork bats go. Let aluminum bats go. Go nuts. The pitchers can use whatever they want, and the hitters are going to come out there and try with whatever crazy stuff they've got to, and let's see a whole bunch of dingers. That's all anybody really cares about.
Brian, is this a case of the goalie's equipment got too big, or what? What do you say?
Hey, listen, I'm kind of with Clark on this one. Baseball's lost me a bit. Like I used to be a big fan of the game, but they've got so many different issues with cheating over the years. With the big Houston Astros fiasco a few years back, and how the league handled it, or in my mind didn't handle it. But they've had the cork bats, they've had the juice players, they've had all sorts of things. But I will say it has been a little bit hilarious to watch as the pitchers are starting to represent more of Team Chippendales. As they, it's a good thing your kids aren't walking in when the pitcher is getting checked for his supposed foreign substance. But you know what? I despise cheating. I despise cheaters even more. Yeah. And baseball's lost me for now because it's got a lot of stuff. And maybe Clark's point around just let them do anything goes. Juice the ball, cork the bats, take the steroids, do whatever, because they've kind of run the gamut through problems in baseball. And so that's why I'm likewise. I just spend my 30 minutes watching the Jays in 30 and keeping track of how many times Vladdy and Teoscar can hit the ball out of the park. But I don't have a lot of time to invest in baseball right now.
Didn't Vince McMahon try that with the XFL? Like try just the anything league, like
anything goes. Yeah.
Anything goes. Like, how about you, Roland? You've been into baseball. You're
Yeah, with the Tigers, I'm a huge Tigers fan. Love to go to games. Haven't been able the last 2 years because of COVID. We can't cross the border, can't go over. I agree with Clark. They shouldn't be changing this now in the middle of the season. Just let it go. But pitchers have been cheating for 100 years. I don't know if you guys remember Gaylord Perry and the Negro brothers. Gaylord Perry used to touch himself like 20 different spots. He'd go to his hair, the back of his neck, his pants, his belt. He'd go to 10 spots before he threw a pitch. He had something somewhere, right? They could never catch him, but he had something somewhere. So they've been cheating like for forever. So I don't know. And other pitchers, the ones that could really throw hard, they needed something on their hands. Like a Randy Johnson or a Roger Clemens, or just to control the baseball. I've sat behind home plate at Tiger Stadium, and I've seen those pitchers do something with the ball where I go, how the heck did the ball do that? It's coming to the players at eye level, and just before home plate, it sinks down and it's a strike. Then you go, oh my God, he did that with the baseball. And that's, like you said, the spin rate and the way they throw that ball, but also I think what they have on their hands to control that ball. So I don't know. Again, they've been cheating. Hitters have been cheating. Pitchers have been cheating. Everybody tries to get an advantage, right?
I think I may have
baseball for 100 years. That's been baseball for 100 years.
I think I may have missed an opportunity to be a baseball player, because I remember as a child I would throw the ball and it would look like it's going to the right spot. Inevitably, I would break somebody's car window. Like it would take a dive. So maybe I always had the.
You had the stuff.
I did. I just didn't. Nobody was there to say, hey, let's pick up this guy. I don't know. So I'm hearing, we're talking baseball, and I'm hearing, well, the pitchers have been doing this forever. Leave them alone. But we just got off a hockey topic where we said, hey, maybe we can't leave them alone, even though they've been doing this for 100 years. I don't know. We're confused fans. Like it's okay in this sport, but it's not okay in that sport. I just want to know this. What is the substance? Like, what do they put on the ball? Like, what is the...
Well, it's just a sticky substance too. I forget what the name is, but it's to get a good grip on the ball, right?
Well, there's a new one.
The Nickel brothers, they used to use like nail files. They used to have nail files in their gloves.
Wow.
And they'd scrape the ball against the nail files so they could get so that ball would do funky things going
Clark, you got it. You got insight too on this, or?
Yeah, so there's a new one. I was reading about this a little while ago. There's a new one called, I'll drop the name brands and you can bleep me out.
No, it's okay.
But a new one called Spider Tack that was actually created for, it was created for strongman competitions and carrying around those big Atlas weights or whatever they're called.
Wow.
And apparently the guy who created this stuff, whatever journalist I was reading reached out to him and said, hey, pitchers are using this all the time. What do you think about that? And you're like, they are? Why are they doing that? It totally was not intended for this. The guy who created it had no idea what was going on, and it just blew his mind too. So we're not alone.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you guys remember football? With Fred Biletnikoff and the Raiders, and they had that, whatever he put on his hands, it was like glue.
Stick-tack or something, yeah.
Stickum. Was it Stickum?
Stickum, yeah, Stickum.
Yeah. And like the ball would be, it's like almost uncatchable. He'd flip up his hand on one hand, boom, bring the ball down. Yeah.
It's like the same stuff that catches flies on the old Shell Daytona strip or whatever.
So let's go from the ugly game to the beautiful game. We're in the middle of Euro Cup 2020 and it's June 2021. But we're pandemic catching up, I guess. we've got the Euro Cup. There's a whole bunch of upsets that apparently have happened. I've got here, and by the way, if Bob McCowan ever does listen to this podcast, he probably wouldn't want to listen to this part because I know he was not a soccer fan. But it's okay. I'm going to channel my worst Bob McCowan here when it comes to soccer. We've got Belgium and Italy, Switzerland and Spain, Ukraine, England, Denmark, and Czechoslovakia. And when I look at the odds here, Italy now has the best odds, followed by England, Spain, Belgium, Denmark, the Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Ukraine. I've had the chance to watch a few of those games. I do love it. I just can't believe how amazing the game is in terms of all the space that they have and just how they move the ball forward and backwards, how they activate the defense and it becomes part of the forward play and all that. I just really enjoy watching that game. I've watched Toronto FC. It's a little bit of a different game here, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying Euro Cup. Even I'd probably say this, even if Italy hadn't advanced, I'm a Italy fan here, but even if they hadn't advanced, I really liked it. But what do you guys think? Are you watching the beautiful game or? Brian,
Sure.
Brian, go ahead.
Hey, listen, like Bob McCowan, I was never a huge fan of the beautiful game, but, got used to scores of 0-0 or 1-0, and those types of games didn't hold much appeal. But I'm going to admit my perspective has been changing over the years. And I have a son-in-law who's absolutely passionate about the game, and we've been recently watching the games on his big 90-inch screen here. And to your point, man, can you ever see the skill in this game? When you get to see it up close, the ball handling, the finesse, the way these players, I think these are some of the most skilled athletes in the world. Some of these guys, it's unreal, and they're on that field for 90 minutes, almost 90 minutes straight, 245 minutes. But
yeah,
what a Euro 2020 this has been, eh? Like the year of the underdog. Look at hockey with the Habs, the year of the underdog. Hey, it's crossing over into the 2020. Like those games last Monday and Tuesday. Unreal. And we were chatting a little earlier. Scores that you'd expect to see in a hockey game. 5-3, 4-3. Forget this 0-0. These have been exciting games. So this is great game. A beautiful game. Absolutely.
Well, Brian, when you say that and like the upsets or whatever, and I gave like I said, some of the odds. Denmark is plus 2,000 odds. Czech Republic plus 10,000 along with Switzerland.
France was the favorite, the absolute favorite. Hey, it's like France losing. That's like the Toronto Maple Leafs losing. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, France was 420. They were ahead of Italy in terms of odds to win.
Yeah, no,
but look
they
at
were the favorite.
Ukraine 12 and a half. Like it's just incredible. So it'll be interesting to see what those guys sort of shake out. Clark, are you a big Euro or a soccer fan?
I mean, not a big Euro fan. I've got to give the caveat that being American, I only watch the U.S. women's national team because they're the only ones that can win anything. I love upsets in tournaments that I really don't have a rooting interest in, or when my team needs the upset. And so you see you see France go out on penalties, and that is just intense to watch. And in general, like I hate the idea of deciding elimination games, and I know there's a lot more history of it in soccer than there is in hockey with a shootout. It drives me nuts, but it is exciting, and that is undeniable. And you put, in this case, the ball on the foot of your best guy and he misses and you're out. And that's just how it goes. And then Guido, you mentioned Denmark and their odds, and Denmark is my team, kind of. Gotta rep my Danish heritage there, and they've had just a crazy tournament because you had Eriksson go out, and that's such a scary thing to see, and we've seen that. I mean, more and more recently in sport, more and more often recently in sports, and it's just it's terrifying to see these athletes that are in peak condition go down like that for seemingly no reason, and you know, we always find out some underlying issue after the fact, but they're superhuman and it's happening to them, and it's what does that mean for the rest of us? It's kind of terrifying. But then Denmark was on, and one of the few things I did see was the part of the Denmark-Russia game where they needed the win to advance, or at least at the start of the game needed the win to advance. And put up 4 on Russia. And the third goal was nuts. They had 2 real close chances that the Russian goalie, Safronov, I think, made 2 big stops from in close, and then just a blast from way outside from Christensen. Everyone goes nuts, and that gives them the 2-goal lead again, and they're looking pretty safe, and it just crazy to watch. Love that stuff.
So Clark, and your analogy, and you got some passion there for Denmark. I didn't realize that before we hit this. So can you imagine a Denmark Italy? Can there be there can be a Denmark Italy final. I'm just looking at the tree, and it's possible that that could happen. Now, Roland, thinking about what Clark said, and you've played, we're not talking, street soccer. You played against some elite teams when you were younger and stuff, and
university level. I was lucky enough to get that far. And sometimes I wonder, I think I was born in the wrong time. I was born like 30 years later. You see more and more, North Americans heading over to Europe and playing, and getting a shot with really good teams. But I mean, Guido and I grew up on soccer. That was it wasn't hockey first for us. It was soccer. It's like, the Italian national team was the number one thing in our household, right? And back then too, we never had a chance to really see club teams, or Serie A, which they call it in Italy. We never got a chance to see it. It just wasn't there. Now, I subscribe to DAZN. I watch all the Italian leagues. I watch all the English soccer as well. When I was younger, I used to tune in with antennas and watch soccer in Germany.
Kaiserslautern.
I watched Borussia Mönchengladbach play, some other teams, and I would be glued to that screen and would be becoming ingrained. But this tournament has been fantastic, I think, for all the teams, and the upsets. That's what's making this tournament. When teams like France are out and Germany are out, and the last champion Portugal is gone as well, right? I mean, and these teams like Switzerland are winning, and it's just great soccer. They're scoring more, and that's grabbing fans' attentions a little bit more because there's more scoring. Great games though, great games. I'm enjoying all the games. I videotaped them, and I'm rewatching them too. It's great games. Just great games.
You're a bit of an analyst when it comes to that stuff. You like to break down the game. I know maybe you should have been a coach, but this is very positive. Everybody's like, we're agreeing. It's a beautiful game. There's a lot of positive things. And I got to ask this question. I played. I never went down the way some of the players go down. And and this is where Bob McCowan would say, come on.
Aaron, that's
right?
I got my line.
Come on. What is it, Brad?
I wouldn't want to be a referee in this tournament because I've seen more diving than the Olympic springboard competition and more time rolling on the grass than a bocce ball.
Is that McCowan or is that you? That's McCowan.
There you go.
Right. No, but I don't get it.
That's the bad part of the game. That's the young, beautiful part of the game. Yeah. But it's part of the game.
Part of the game.
But it's so.
You know what? I just wanted to say a really interesting factor, Guido, is the allegiance challenge here, where you've got because Clark and Roland were talking about all these different leagues and that, right? And so you've got players like you've got Romelu Lukaku from Belgium who plays for Inter Milan. So like the Italians, he's playing against Italy. Like, love the guy when he's playing for Inter Milan, but now he's playing like these things are really cool. That's what I love. And my son-in-law keeps pointing out, he's going, this is interesting because he plays in the Italian league, but he's on Belgium, right? And that's a really neat part and dynamic of this whole tournament.
And the other part of that, Brian, they know each other, so they know each other, right? So there's no surprises. There shouldn't be any surprises with Lukaku. They know what he's like. They know how he plays. Yep. So, but it's interesting. Yeah, the dynamics of that is interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe skill is skill at that point, though. Even though you know each other, skill is skill, right? Like
he's a good player. He's a good player.
Yeah.
I just think though the weather is going to rule this tournament, and there's going to be a big hurricane, and that's going to win it for England.
You're going for the English. The English are coming.
It could be an England-Italy. I think whoever wins between Belgium and Italy is going to be on the final, and I'm predicting either Italy or Belgium against England.
I mean, look at Spain scored 5 goals against Croatia to advance. 5 goals. 5 goals. I don't know that did the Toronto Maple Leafs score 5 goals in the last 3 games of their series there against the Habs? Sorry, I said did.
Yeah, they were missing the bars.
I'm just saying, 5 goals from Spain and Switzerland managed 3 against France. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. Well, what's your call? What's your final call? Euro Cup, Brian. What's your final call?
England.
Oh, England's gonna win it against Italy.
England over Italy.
England over Italy. That's Brian. How about you, Clark?
I have no idea, but I'm going to say not England because I have a coworker who roots for England, and I want to harass him a bit.
So are you going Denmark all the way?
Yeah, sure. Denmark.
Denmark versus what? Italy, Belgium, Switzerland, Spain?
Yeah, I have no idea. I could not give you a real guess at all.
So you're going Denmark. No matter what, Denmark's going to win.
Denmark.
Okay, how about you?
Denmark.
Do it for Denmark. How about you, Ro?
Well, England hasn't won anything since, I believe they said 1966.
Yeah, like me, the Maple Leaf in England.
It's close there, Brian.
Oh gosh.
I gotta stick with the Italians. They had what, like 30 games? What are they at?
31 undefeated games. Yeah, if they beat Belgium, it'll be 32 undefeated games.
You would think that, at some point something's gonna happen there because of that, right? But maybe it will. I don't know. Belgium has a good team.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stick with Italy to win it all. We'll see if they do it.
And who are you calling? Are you calling them to play against England or?
Yeah, England's got a good squad this year. Yeah, they're playing well.
I'm gonna go with Italy just because I have to. I feel like I would betray.
Why am I not surprised?
No, like you don't understand. I still have to talk to my parents here, so like there's.
You might listen to the podcast,
right? Like I drape myself in an Italian flag whenever they play, and I have rituals here, right?
Hey,
so
Federico Chiesa, gonna take them to the altar. They're gonna.
Chiesa. I'm gonna go Italy, but I'm gonna say it'll be Italy, England in the finals. But if Italy was to lose, I would actually think that they would lose to Belgium. Like I think if they get past Belgium, they could take Switzerland or Spain. But I think that Belgium will be one of their tougher challenges in this cup. All right.
I think we'll all agree we don't want the refs to have anything to do with the outcome of this.
Yeah, and I'd prefer if the diving, if the diving kind of stopped and put the yellow and red cards away, right? Put them away.
Exactly. Let them play.
Let them play. So, okay, switching back again, refs segueing quickly. One of our last topics here, COVID-19 mask protocol. And is it just me? And I'm watching the Euro Cup. And the coaches don't have masks on. They're spaced out in the crowds. I'm watching games in Tampa and Vegas, and it's shoulder to shoulder, and there's no real protocol going on. But the one that bugs me is I don't understand it. I don't understand. That's what bugs me. The coaches, they're wearing their masks behind the NHL bench. Are we to believe that they go to the dressing room and they're still wearing their masks? I don't, because I see them pulling it down to drink water, chewing gum, talk to the players, talk to the refs. Why wear it? Like, was there a rule? Is this Clark? Is this a Gary Bettman thing again? Is he saying, make sure you, like, for perception purposes, make sure you guys are, I don't get it. I don't think it does anything. It doesn't help anybody. Why are they doing it?
If it was for perception purposes, if like mandating the mask was for perception purposes, they wouldn't be getting away with pulling it down at every stoppage. I get it less than you do. I really do not know.
Right on. Bri, you are you watching? Are you guys seeing the same thing?
I think initially it was a mandate of the NHL, and probably at the time when it was first mandated, a good thing. That's when we were in the thick of COVID. But I think to your point, like now that, you're seeing packed arenas in the States, you're seeing all the other sports where they're not doing it. It has got a bit of a funny look, especially when you see them pulling it down. I think the NHL missed an opportunity and lost control of it when they didn't do fines with the coaches at the beginning when they were pulling it down and using it. I think,
right.
Hey, listen, I'm one for safety. I think it was a good call at the beginning, but now it's kind of, it's kind of weird because everything's, with vaccinations and not everything's getting back to normal, but they kind of look funny standing there with their masks on and yanking them down half the time. So,
yeah, I'm going to agree with both you guys. I don't know why they're still doing it. They should have those masks off. Although maybe in Montreal's case, with the coach having COVID, I don't know if he could have given it to the team or certain players again. I don't know. I don't know how he caught it, but with being vaccinated and everything, but I guess you can. I'm not sure.
I heard a great quote from Peter Laviolette when he had his on, and it was like, it's a good thing we're wearing the mask because at least my mother can't see what I'm yelling.
That sounds like a Peter Laviolette thing, actually. Yeah. All right. So we're not going to solve the COVID mask, but if you guys are listening, just take them off. Stop. If it's not, it looks bad. Either wear them or don't wear them, but make up your mind, right?
Yeah.
So to round things out, this has been a fun conversation, but to round things out, and we've all had a chance to sort of rebut each other's opinions, we're going to do something called 4-on-4. One at a time. You each have under a minute to you speak uninterrupted, about whatever topic you'd like to speak about. And the rebuttal can only one person. You can only rebut one opinion. So after we've all four of us have made our last statements of the podcast as far as the sports goes, Clark, I can only rebut either what you say or Brian or Roland. I can't rebut all three of you. Only one. So pick if you want to rebut. You don't have to. You only have 30 seconds to say, no way, man, you're wrong. but Brian, we'll start with you.
Well, listen, thanks, Guido. As the senior member of the panel, I want to talk about how old guys rule. In particular, I want to point out two NHL hockey players that completely demonstrate that fact. So I'm going to talk about Jason Spezza and Corey Perry. So in a current era where we seem to talk more about the business side of the game, salary caps, players ditching loyalty for multi-million-dollar contracts as restricted and unrestricted free agents, along come Jason Spezza and Corey Perry, two seasoned veterans that are reminding us it's all about the game. Spezza, arguably one of the better Leafs during their early playoff exit series this year, playing for the love of the game and not the big bucks. And you looked at the smile on his face, clearly showing his joy in playing and still giving his all. Perhaps some of the young Leafs like Marner and Matthews will have picked up something from his play, and that it's not just your stats on paper, but what's in your heart. I think he was a great addition to the Leafs. And look at Corey Perry, the warrior, quickly become the wise old veteran, showing the way for the young Habs on what it takes to win in the playoffs. That meme of his bloodied face when he took the high stick to the face, coming out to greet his team after their big win, is going to live on forever. So in my opinion, in this playoff, old guys rule.
Thank you, Brian. How about you, Clark?
I'm going to go back to our conversation about NHL officiating and say that while I don't think it's an integrity issue, while I don't think it's a big conspiracy, I still don't like to see the extra stuff after the whistle, the cross checks, the gloved punches really bother me. Either throw down or don't. And so while it's not a conspiracy and it's clearly something the NHL is okay with, that doesn't mean I like it. And I'm leaving it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Clark. Roland.
I'm going to go to hockey players being just a different breed of player compared to the other leagues, compared to the NBA, to the NFL, to soccer. I just read something the other day where Alec Martinez of Vegas came out and they said he played with a broken foot. I don't know what they were doing to him, injecting him, whatever they were doing to him. He played with a broken foot. Tuukka Rask, torn labrum in his hip. You could tell while he was playing that something was wrong with him. He wasn't moving laterally like he normally could, right? But he was playing and something torn in his hip, right? You've got Weber in Montreal playing with, I don't know what he did to his hand. Is it broken? Same with Petrie. Petrie sounds like he broke 2 fingers, right? Stamkos last year came back and he had a core issue problem where it was ripped, and he came back to play for 20 seconds, scored a goal, right? But he hopped on the ice and he did that, right? You don't see that in other leagues. My God, you look, even the NBA, somebody's got a little thing wrong with them. They're out for 6 weeks. They won't be playing. The NHL players are just a different breed, man. And you can see players now even going in and they're all caught up. Bruce Gallagher looks horrible. He was absolutely horrible, right? They're still out there. Who knows what else they have or what other players, injuries that are out there that we don't even know about. Now, I don't know if they should be playing. I don't know why the doctors aren't stopping them. I don't know how even the NHL is saying, they're okay to play, but they're in there. And you got to have respect for that.
Thanks, Roland. I think you were on Italy time with that 1 minute, but it was so good I couldn't stop you. All right. Mine, no surprise, Brian. It's going to be on the refs. As a hockey and Montreal Canadiens fan, I should just be enjoying the NHL playoffs and not thinking about anything else except the amazing goaltending of Price and Vasilevsky. The emergence of some young talent in Caulfield and Suzuki and Kotkaniemi, the resiliency of guys like Kucherov and Perry and Weber and Stahl, to Roland's point, the record-setting play of Braden Point and Tyler Toffoli, who said he was born to be a Habs, the inspiring play of the Habs, who've made it as far as they have on passion, at the very least. Instead, I'm distracted. I'm distracted by a sideshow almost every game. That sideshow has come from the stripes on the ice, the referees. Each and every round, and for several games, they've stood by and watched guys get punched in the face, cross-checked to the dressing room, their noses sliced open, and then they've called nothing. Then a player grazes another player's stick with their own or falls over the blue line, and they get the gate. They've challenged my understanding of the rule book. They've taken me on an emotional roller coaster game in and game out, and they've had way more headlines than they should. In the words of Jeremy Roenick, and I really can't believe I'm about to quote Jeremy Roenick, wake up, NHL. Wake up. That's my final thought. I hope that I still think it needs to get fixed, and I hope it gets fixed. Now, any rebuttals or any comments on any of the other things that were said today from anyone? Brian.
Yeah, so listen, I'm going to Roland. Enough on the refs already. Enough on the refs. Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. Hockey players are a different breed. I had an opportunity a few years back to play at a Bell Celebrity Classic with a whole bunch of celebrities, NHL players, NFL football players, TV, music, a whole bunch, and people got paired up with golfers. Anyway, at the dinner at the end of it, the NHL players, bar none, Daryl Sittler, Lanny McDonald, Cassie Campbell from the female side, were the most accessible, decent, nice people there, gave their time, talked to everybody, talked to me, signed autographs, whatever. I can't say that for some of the other celebrities that were there. So yeah, you know what? They play hard on the ice. They give it their all. And I find them just to be the exact same off the ice in the community with charity events and things like that. They give it their all. Hats off to hockey players. They're the best.
Thanks, Brian. Roland, anything for you on any of the four things?
No, I think I'm okay. Kind of what everybody said. Yeah, I kind of agree with everything.
How about you, Clark? Any follow-ups?
I'm going to say something a little unpopular, and I'm going to rebut the hockey players being a different breed a little bit. And I don't say that to take away from hockey players. I say that because we have the tendency to use quite a bit of hyperbole talking about them. When earlier, when we were talking about Euro, we were talking about how great the athletes they are, and hockey is different. Yes, absolutely. I love watching what hockey players do out there, how much they put themselves at risk. Not at risk is the wrong word, but how much they put it all out there. And it happens that way in other sports in different ways. And I think hockey fans, we have the tendency to minimize that. And I'm trying not to do that as much as I used to. So I want to give a shout out to the other sports as well and say, they're out there we're talking Euro, we're saying they're out there, giving it all out there. And it's not just hockey.
Very good, Clark. Thank you. There's one thing that has been very clear to me that between the four of us, and I'm not going to rebut any of you, because I thought everybody said something fantastic in your own way, because I saw a whole lot of passion. And if you listen to my episode with Ryan Walter, that's something that he talked a lot about, the passion and the process, and we certainly went through a process here tonight doing our first chat, and we are very passionate in what we believe as fans. I do believe that we gave a very good representation of what's out there among other fans, and it doesn't matter if you like the Penguins or the Blackhawks or the Leafs. The things that we said are transferable to those players, to those teams, to those games, and to other sports. So thank you to the four of you, Brian, to the three, Brian, Roland, and Clark. It was a treat. And maybe when we get together for the next episode, we'll have to talk about who won the Stanley Cup, who won the Euro Cup, and a whole bunch of stuff in between. Maybe there'll be a brand new baseball rule by then. Who knows? Thanks, guys. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed doing it, and that you'll tune in again for another segment in a future podcast. But now it's time for the part of the show where I usually tell you a story or reference one of my articles from GuidoPrino.com. Today, I'm going to reference the article, "I Think You're Missing My Point," and you don't want to miss it. So here goes. Haven't we all been in that somewhat awkward moment, either witnessing the exchange between others or perhaps being on the receiving end of an "I think you're missing my point" statement? The moments following that statement are crucial in determining how the rest of the conversation goes, especially when it comes to the receiver's response. What do we hear when someone uses those words? And are the words alone enough to interpret meaning? Or is tone and context also important? I mean, whether you hear it or read it, emphasizing one word over the other changes the way it can be interpreted. I think you're missing my point. 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 You get the point, right? The statement begins with the word I, which alone immediately communicates some level of taking on accountability and is often a great way to start the communication. Tony Robbins, in How to Use I Statements, says that an I statement forces us to take responsibility for what we are thinking and feeling and prevents us from blaming our partners. I statements also imply some level of assertiveness, and Robbins advises that we can still be assertive, but find a less hostile, more compassionate way to communicate. Tone of voice, vocal inflection, volume, and pitch is an important piece of communication that we often forget about. The word following I in this statement sets the path and tone of the statement. That word is think. It's what our parents have always said to us, right? Think about your future. Think about your choices. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. The act of thinking has been bronzed in a sculpture by Auguste Rodin, dubbed Le Penseur, as it helps us reflect on reflecting. Yet, here we are, perhaps just throwing it around in a way that negates the accountability of I, because when you say I think, what you're really saying is, I'm not sure. And probably what's coming is, I'm not sure because of something you did, not me. Ultimately, also creating an escape route for yourself, because if you think and aren't certain, then if by some reason you're wrong, well, you didn't take full ownership of your words because you were only thinking. As you move on to the third word, you've pretty much solidified the accusation. In 3 simple words, you went from owning the confusion, concern, disagreement by starting with I, removing any responsibility by using think, and then completely shifting the issue you're having onto the receiver as you call them out with a hard you're. You know, the reversal of the gentler and cliche, it's not you, it's me, except here, you've washed your hands of any ownership and likely raised the defense reflex of your receiver. Now, if the next word was heading towards something nice, like I think you're awesome, or I think you're a kind person, or I think you're going to love this food, well, then it softens the transition of the first 3 words towards perhaps a more positive outcome, although you're still unsure about it as you continue to think. But that's not what you're doing here. And when you use the word missing, you've now identified what the person has done wrong, or at least what you think they've done wrong, which of course still gives you that escape route, but it's hard to recover from awkwardness at this point, because when you identify the other person is missing something, you're telling them they've failed. They achieved a void of some sort at the very best. Like an addictive infomercial, it gets worse though as you continue to close out the statement. You see, it's not bad enough you've pointed out that they've missed something. Now you're going to tell them that they're not listening to you when you say, this is my point. You've completely asserted yourself as the victim. Hey, I told you something and you're not hearing me. Do you hear me telling you that you're not hearing me? It almost sounds like one of those circular conversations Lucy would have with Charlie Brown and then take his 5 cents for her advice services, but he always left looking as lost as he did when he first started talking to her. The last word at this point is somewhat inconsequential. I mean, it could really be anything that the person has missed, but at the same time, there's still something about saying point that grinds away at the perceived failure. The fact that you've made a point about something, whatever that point is, and that the other person missed your point, reinforces the transition of failure and misunderstanding to the receiver. So, What could you say instead of, I think you're missing my point? How about, can you help me better understand? Or could you consider this feedback as you update your next version of the presentation? Or I'd like to provide additional clarity on my feedback. That last statement is a step towards taking true and full accountability for your words and what you are thinking. My point is this. Telling someone that you think they've missed your point does nothing for building your relationship, and the receiver will likely remember that moment or statement more than they will any potential constructive thing you might have said. Get your point across, own it, and do it in a way that builds trust, healthy communication, and mutual constructive opportunities. This is an opinion article by me, Guido Perino, the Go On With Guido podcast. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that article, folks. You can read it at guidoperino.com under the blog section. For now, I'm going to leave you with a song that I wrote and sang as a music hobbyist. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for listening this July. Stay safe and hope to see you in August. Take care, everybody.